much for joining our HDR internship workshop today. While we're waiting for a few other HDRs to attend, I would love if you could pop your student ID into the chat so that we can record your attendance and be able to send you the resources from this workshop after the workshop later today. And also, it's a great way for us to just check that the chat is working and that you're able to make comments and ask questions through the chat as well. So thanks everyone for putting your student ID number into the chat. And I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes because we had quite a few students who were registered to attend this workshop. So we'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll kick off. And thanks everyone for putting your student ID number into the chat, much appreciated. Helps us be able to email you the resources later today. All right, we'll just give it maybe another 30 seconds and then we'll kick off. So thanks everyone for your patience. Okay, so it's 10:02, so let's get started. So again, thank you all so much for joining the HDR Internships workshop today. It's actually my first workshop of 2023, so it might seem a little bit weird for me to say Happy New Year in the middle of February, but Happy New Year to you all. I hope you're very excited for a wonderful year ahead. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about HDR internships. My name is Susan Schlinker, and I'm one of your HDR industry engagement consultants from the Graduate Research Education and Development team. I'm also joined by the fabulous Ivy Chen, who is the Grad Admin Support Officer. Hi, Ivy. And Ivy is going to be putting some links into the chat for you as we go along. So you're able to copy and paste those links from the chat and open the web pages as we go through and have a look at some of the resources. I'm also so delighted to be joined today by Maithri Velmurugan, who is one of our HDR industry engagement superstars. Maithri not only undertook an internship with Lockheed Martin last year, and Maithri is going to be talking a little bit about her experience of undertaking that internship a little bit later in the session. But Maithri was also one of the 3-minute thesis finalists for the 3MT competition in 2022. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end. And if you have any questions about Maithri's internship experience or about 3MT, I'm sure Maithri would be happy to answer questions on either of those topics. So thanks so much for being here, Maithri, and really looking forward to hearing more about your internship experience a bit later. Okay, so before we get started, I know you're all Zoom experts, but just to let you know, this session will be recorded and you're welcome to keep your microphone and camera off during the workshop. It does tend to help with the bandwidth for everyone else. And you're also very welcome to use the chat function throughout the workshop to ask questions and make any comments. And I'll be encouraging you at a few points throughout the workshop to make comments as well. And before we kick off, I'd also really like to warmly acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits, recognizing that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play, both within the QUT and the wider community. And I would also like to extend my personal acknowledgement that if you're joining from somewhere else besides Meanjin or Brisbane, I'd also like to extend my acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the lands that you're zooming in from today. Okay, so today's workshop, what are we going to cover? We'll be talking about the benefits of HDR internships, what a HDR internship is and what your options are to secure one. And then we're going to hear from Maithri about her HDR internship experience. And I also have another video for you from another PhD candidate talking about her internship experience as well. So you'll get to hear a couple of different student experience stories. Then I would love to walk you through what's involved in a HDR internship. What's the process so that you can get an overview of what the experience will look like end to end. Then after we hear from Maithri, I'm going to take you through some preparation tips for your HDR internship application and also your interview. And these are really crucial to being successful in applying for an internship. I'll take you through some of the additional training and support that's available, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. But as I said, you're very welcome to put questions into the chat as we go through as well. But I would like to start with a question to you, which is, I would like you to start with the end in mind. So at 11:30 this morning, when you close this Zoom screen, what is one thing that you would like to walk away from this session with? Would you like to feel better prepared for how to undertake a HDR internship interview? Would you like to know more about the process? So I'd really encourage you to put whatever your goal is of what you would like to gain from this session into the chat. And that will also help other people that are here today inform their goal for the session. And also it'll help me so that I know what you would like to hear most about and what I should spend more time on. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds now to put something into the chat. And don't be shy. Or you could private message me as well, if you would prefer other people not to know. Okay, so Mudu has said what an internship means in terms of my career. What are some potentially organizations or industry for you, and how this experience affect finding a job? They're great. How to find our subject-related internships. Yes, we can definitely cover that. Okay, all right. We've got some, thank you so much to you both. How to find internships and interviews. Thank you, Lewis. Great. I'll definitely be able to cover all of this, and I'll make sure that we have time at the end for any additional questions as well. So thank you so much for putting your comments into the chat. So I'm going to start with just a very broad introduction. If you've not heard of GRED before, that acronym stands for the Graduate Research Education and Development Team. So we're a team that works with the whole university to provide you with optional training and learning experiences as you go through your HDR journey. And our main two foci are to help HDRs complete their thesis and also to equip HDRs for life after their degree. So industry engagement really does sit with that second goal of helping equip HDRs for life after their degree. And certainly internship experiences can have a great impact on job opportunities and being able to just demonstrate your experience in the real world. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the session. I'm just going to pause for 1 second because I can see that we have a couple of other messages that have come through the chat. Great. Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'll be able to cover that. Okay, so before we get into it, I'd love to start with this video from PhD candidate Sarah Dillon, who's discussing her HDR internship experience, just so that you can get a taste of what an internship might look like for you. So I'll play the video now.
I'm Sarah Dillon, and my PhD research looks at international entrepreneurs and their emotions, and how the ways that they manage their emotions affects their decision making. And this is important because we know a lot of small businesses fail, and if we can help entrepreneurs make better decisions, we can help fewer businesses fail. So the internship was with QUT's Centre for the Digital Economy, and the project was a sort of commercial consultancy type project for a government agency. And we were tasked with trying to understand how different stakeholders in Queensland dealt with and engaged with the digital economy. We had to speak to, not-for-profits, community groups, volunteer-based organisations, businesses, big ones, small ones, manufacturing services, and really gain an understanding of how they were engaging with the digital economy and what they needed from the digital economy. There were 3 main reports. One of them sort of addressed some of the questions that we had been asked to look at directly, and I suppose was a lot more strategic. Another report looked at just some of the general feedback and concerns and trends that we could see emerging in the space based on our analysis of what other digital economies around the world were doing. And then there was another piece that looked at, more broadly, how do communities, how do people, how does society engage with government and with government guidance and regulations and the different tools that we have to help people. Part of what we really were tasked with was running these workshops that were co-designed with the government partner. And that way, part of our role really was to help the partner gain that taste themselves directly from these different stakeholder groups, so that our reports weren't just PDFs. We'd really helped the partner understand what was going on as a whole. I think professionally, I've definitely got a better understanding of where my PhD and the skills that I've acquired during the PhD, where that fits in the bigger picture of industry. But also more broadly, how research can inform business, how research can inform society, how research can really make a difference and, move some of the levers and make change in the ways that, we often want to see. Here I was, on the one hand, you're in sell yourself mode, when you do an interview. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, now I've got to do what I've just, said I can do. And matching up your behaviors and what you're delivering with what you've said you can, it can be a little bit intimidating. But then when you can do that, it feels incredible. Like, you really realize that what the PhD gives you, it's not just the piece of paper, it's so much more. And I think in that way, personally, it's helped me become the professional I wanted to become and the human I wanted to become by doing the PhD. And I don't think I would have seen that quite as tangibly if I hadn't done the internship. Having been through the whole internship process, I can wholeheartedly recommend other PhD students give this a go. Initially, I wasn't sure about doing an internship because I come to my PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. It sort of unlocked understanding that allowed me to make more of my PhD somehow. I would definitely recommend PhD students get in there and, have a look and make an internship for yourself happen. I'm Sarah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. And one thing I will say is that every internship is very unique. Each internship project is unique and bespoke. And so Sarah's project is just one example of the many internship projects that we've done before. But I think she raises so many good points about how the internship experience really helped her tangibly understand more about her PhD. And I know Maithri just gave me that feedback this morning as well. So we'll hear more from Maithri about her internship experience a little bit later. And I think that'll be great for you to have a couple of different examples of internship projects. Okay, so let's start with what is industry. And I remember when I started in this role and I had a HDR say to me, I don't want to work with industry because I don't want to work in manufacturing. And I realized that perhaps there was a miscommunication about what industry was. So let's unpack the definition. Industry really refers to any potential end user of research. And this can include businesses, governments, government business enterprises, non-government organizations, not-for-profit groups, and community organizations. So my question for you is, based on that list there, is there one particular type of industry that you have a preference to undertake an internship with more than others? Say perhaps a government organization, maybe that's your preference. So if you do have any preference, I'd love for you to pop it into the chat and let me know. And then the other big question is, why a HDR internship? And I think Sarah's video really demonstrates that a lot of HDR students have come into their HDR journey, having already perhaps worked in industry, and they have some experience. And so I think it's a very valid question of why should you undertake this experience? And I have a few pieces of advice around that, but I think the most critical one is that internships are really important irrespective of your intended career path, whether you intend to work in academia or in industry after graduation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that over the next couple of slides. But also, internships can really help you develop a whole range of skills, including the ones listed on the slide here: research articulation skills, being able to communicate with a non-academic audience about your area of research. That's so important, irrespective of where you intend to work after graduation. Industry experience and skills, definitely valuable for both academia and industry. Research impact metrics, practical application of your skills in the real world, evidence of your skills in the real world for your professional resume as well. And this is really critical. I remember I was at an event at the Center for Data Science last year, and there was an industry panel who were talking about what they would look for when they were hiring a recent graduate of a HDR degree. And they all said the same thing, which is, it's wonderful that you have that degree, but how do we know that you can apply the skills that you gained from that degree in the real world? And they actually all pointed to a HDR internship as a way that you can demonstrate the skills that you've developed as a HDR student practically and have that evidenced on your professional resume. So it's a really valuable opportunity when you are looking for employment after graduation. And it's a great way to build connections. We've had a lot of students go on to gain employment after their internships. And it also does help to expand their potential career options after graduation as well. And so I would like you to think about, because often I have students who say, you know, I'm working in this one particular niche research area. And so I'm looking for an internship in that area. But I would really encourage you to think more broadly as well, because most of our internship projects, I would say, are transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary. And so I would love for you to think about what sectors that you could possibly use your research skills to work in after graduation, and then help that inform your options for who to approach as an industry partner or an organization when you're looking at sourcing an internship. I'm just going to pause for 1 second to see what people have put in the chat. Interesting. Okay, government organizations and not-for-profit groups are among the most popular of industry types to work for. Good for me to know. Thank you. And I think one of the most important reasons that you should really consider undertaking a HDR internship is the fact that about 60% of PhD graduates will find work outside academia after graduation. And this is based on the post-COVID report that came out just last year in 2022. So 60% of PhD graduates go on to work outside of academia. So really, we want to be able to equip you, as is our grad goal, for life after your degree. And, I'm not saying this to be harsh, but it just is the reality, that it would be in your best interest to prepare for work both in academia and outside of academia after graduation. Now, we've also got a quote on the screen here from the Acola report from 2016. And I know that you're probably thinking, Susan, 2016 is so long ago. How is that still relevant? And I have to say, this report is still definitely the highest of its level that's come out. And it says the HDR training must not be seen as an academic apprenticeship, but as the highest level of university education, the outcomes of which can be applied across a range of different careers. And I think that's really essential to think about what an internship can give you, preparing you to be able to apply your research skills across a range of different careers. So some information is that there really is an increasing focus on innovation and development in industry. And this is very much supported and encouraged by the federal government as well. And so your advanced research skills really are needed in industry. And so many of these reports, they actually talk about the needs of the future workforce and the skill shortage around transferable research skills. And these are things that HDR graduates have in abundance, and they're really needed in industry. So we encourage you to see yourself as a well-rounded researcher as the result of your degree, and applicable to a range of different careers. And understanding industry engagement activities now will really help to set up your future career success, irrespective of where you gain employment after graduation. Just a little more stats for you. This is from the post-COVID impact report that came out last year as well. So in the graph on the left, you can see the academic jobs during COVID really plummeted, and they've gone back up since then, but they're still quite stable to where they were pre-COVID, around that sort of 1,000 to 1,200 job ads a month. Whereas when you have a look at the graph on the right, you can see that the number of non-academic research jobs is significantly higher. And also it has grown and stayed stable as well after COVID. So just something to bear in mind for where potential job opportunities are after graduation. So that's a little bit about why you should undertake a HDR internship and how it will benefit your career. And now I'd love to move into what a HDR internship actually is. So it's a short-term, clearly defined project with or for industry. And the project agreement must be approved by GRED. So you'll more than likely be working with me to facilitate your HDR internship. So the project is between you as a HDR student and also your academic mentor, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and an industry partner. It's a separate project from your thesis research, but ideally it would be great if it's relevant to your research in some way. And this doesn't necessarily mean in terms of the topic of the research project, but it could be in skill development that you need as a HDR. I just had one of our engineering students complete an internship with TMR. Transport and Main Roads, and she developed this software package for them that's now implemented at Transport and Main Roads and being used. And one of the most outstanding skill development that she got from that experience, she said, you know, my programming and my Python abilities have dramatically improved. And that's something that really is a great skill that I can demonstrate on my CV. And it's something that I can use in the future after graduation. So it's great to think about it in terms of that way, the skills that you can gain and how they're relevant, not just to your niche research topic, but to your general skill development as a HDR student. So the industry partner, they own the IP of the internship project. And the project could be a standalone project with an industry partner, or it could be part of a larger grant or research collaboration. So in that example that I just gave you of the student working with Transport and Main Roads, that was part of a larger collaboration that was happening at QUT. And the student was able to plug into that and to complete the internship as part of that larger collaboration. So a great, and we'll talk about this later, but a great place to start is by chatting to your supervisor to see if they're involved in any collaborations with industry, and if you're able to have an internship project that can be a part of that. So the internships can be somewhere between 3 to 6 months in length. The longest that we can accommodate is 6 months, but you can have 3, 4, 5, 6 months in length. And that is really dependent on what the industry partner is looking for you to achieve or deliver within the internship timeframe. So for you, how the mechanics of it work is your candidature is paused. And this is because we move you from your thesis unit into IFN 004, which is the HDR internship shell unit. So it means your candidature clock stops ticking. Candidature is paused. It also means your scholarship is paused. However, the industry partner provides funding for the HDR intern. So this is provided directly to QUT, and then QUT provides you with a fortnightly stipend that is in lieu of you receiving your scholarship while you're undertaking the internship, so that you're still able to cover your living expenses while you're doing an internship. And in terms of eligibility, to participate, we've got the different degree types on the screen there. But what you can see in common is that all of them require you to have completed a minimum of 6 months full-time equivalent. And then stage 2 for IF49 students, the research project proposal for IF80 and KK59 students, and the work in progress doc for ED11 students. And also at this point, I'd love to say in terms of eligibility, I often get asked if international students are able to undertake an internship, and the answer is absolutely yes. We encourage you to. The overwhelming majority of internships are open to both domestic and international students. In my experience, it's only been, say, perhaps defense organizations that require a HDR intern to be a domestic student or an Australian citizen because they require a certain level of security clearance. It's only in those couple of instances that perhaps international students aren't able to apply for those specific internship opportunities. However, for the most part, we really try to have internship opportunities that are available to both domestic and international students. So let's talk about who the internship academic mentor could be. So it could be your supervisor, and in a lot of ways that would seem quite natural. However, it can be another QUT academic staff member who has expertise relevant to the internship project content. So one example is I had a HDR complete an internship with BMW last year. And he said, I would actually prefer to have someone other than my supervisor as my academic mentor, because that in itself is a really great networking opportunity for me to have contact with another academic staff member and access to their network of contacts. So just something for you to bear in mind, that that's an option for you. And when you do have an internship project that we're working on facilitating for you, you can let me know. If you've sourced your own, and we'll get into the difference between sourcing and applying in a second, but if you've sourced your own internship, you can choose if you would like your supervisor or another academic staff member. And they assist with developing and vetting the project for suitability, because we want to make sure that we're setting you up on a project that's feasible and reasonable for the time frame. And there's also a couple of incentives for them to be your academic mentors. So they're very welcome to reach out to me to chat more about what those are. As I just touched on, there's a couple of different ways that you can secure an internship. So the first way is to apply for an advertised HDR internship via our HiQ site. Now, these are internship opportunities that we have cultivated with industry partners, and they're coming through obviously the QT HDR internship program, but we also work with HDR Intern, who are an approved third-party provider of HDR internships, and my 3's internship was actually through HDR Intern, so you'll hear a little bit about her experience a bit later on. But sometimes we also have external programs, such as the Nicolas Baudin program, which are internships in France, the STEM Policy Graduate Internship Program, Parliamentary Library of Australia Summer Research Program. So you'll see a few different types when you're having a look on the HiQ site of the different options that are available for you to apply with. If anyone is a business HDR student, I'll just let you know, I have 3 fantastic internship opportunities currently advertised on the HiQ link that I think Ivy has just put into the chat for you, with a really fantastic industry partner called Navitas. There's 3 really interesting projects available. One is on macroeconomic volatility, one on the impact of COVID, and one on migration trends. So if you're interested, stick around for the Q&A and we can talk a little bit more about those particular opportunities, because applications close this Sunday. Okay, so applying for existing internship opportunities is one way that you can find yourself an internship. The other way is that you can self-source your own. And this road, or this avenue of securing an internship, I would say easily 60% of students who undertake an internship choose this road, because it's a really great way for you to choose your own adventure. You can reach out to the industry partners that you're specifically interested in and establish a relationship with them, pitch the internship to them, and then I help you to formalize and to facilitate the internship with that industry partner. And I think that there's a whole lot of skills that you really gain from that self-sourcing, of being able to broaden your network and form a relationship and pitching, and all of those skills are actually really valuable later on. So they're the 2 different options that you have in securing an internship. And what I'm going to do is just give you a very quick overview of what's involved in those 2 different options. So this is for option number 1, if you're applying for an existing HDR internship on our HiQ page. So you apply for it. We then do an internship eligibility check. You would, if you're shortlisted, you would then have an interview with the industry partner. You participate in finalizing the internship agreement. We have some pre-internship requirements for you to complete. They're quite minimal. They'll take about an hour and a half of your time. You then commence the internship. You complete, obviously, the deliverables of the internship project, but also the mid and final internship presentations, which are your assessment for the internship unit. There's a couple of post-internship requirements to complete, a survey to complete, and then you receive your HDR internship certificate of completion, which is from our Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research, Professor Christopher Barner-Kowalik. And that's something great that you can share on LinkedIn. It's something so valuable to have in your professional resume that you can point to when you're in future prospective employer interviews, to say, this is how I can demonstrate my research skill set in the real world. So that's for when you're applying. And then what's different in the self-sourcing is just the first 3 steps. So instead of applying, you would identify a potential industry partner, form a relationship with that industry partner, and then pitch the internship project to them. Then you reach out to me and we go through the rest of the steps. as you would if you were applying. So that's the difference between applying and self-sourcing for a HDR internship. And I'll let you know that I also run workshops on self-sourcing HDR internships. And I take you through that proven model of how to establish a relationship, undertake an informational interview with the industry partner to get to know them better. They get to know you better before you then pitch the internship with them, because cold calling industry partners and saying, hey, I'd love an internship, it's really not going to work. So we have a proven model on what's the best approach for self-sourcing an internship. And I take you through that in the self-sourcing and internship training session. The next one is coming up on the 23rd of March, and I would highly recommend that you register for it. And I can take you through that process of self-sourcing, and then you're fully equipped to go out and approach industry partners to find internship opportunities. And we also have more info available on our HiQ site on self-sourcing a HDR internship. And also, if you have, or if you think you've already found an industry partner who's potentially interested, you're more than welcome to email me at hdr.intern@qut.edu.au, and I can get the ball rolling with you on information that we need from the industry partner to help facilitate your internship and formalize it. So that's a little bit more about self-sourcing. I'm just going to pause for a second because I can see that we've got a couple of messages in there. So a couple of messages in the chat are that links aren't working. Let me look into that, and I will make sure that everything's updated so that when I send out the resources a little bit later today, then all the links will be working. But Ivy, if I don't know if you have any time, if you're able to just check out, there's a couple of links that students have said aren't working, and maybe pop new links into the chat, only if you have time. And then, okay, Gillian has said they're all working for you. Okay, maybe, sometimes it's if you're logged in as a student versus a staff member. Sometimes you can not be able to access the student things when you're logged in as a staff member. So maybe just check your login to make sure that you're logged in as a student. Okay, and Samudu has said that they're working for you too. Okay, great. That would be my recommendation. Check to make sure that you're logged in as a student. And then we had a really great question. Should the internship include an academic mentor as mentioned in the second line? Could this be one of my PhD supervisors? What is expected of him or her in this internship? Samuda, could you just clarify what you mean by the second line? But it certainly can be one of your PhD supervisors. And it's a great question, what's expected of them. I am not an expert in every research area across QUT, and so I really do need their expertise when we're initially working with the industry partner and we're developing the proposed internship activities for your internship project. So we get the academic mentor to have a look at what the industry partner has proposed and to make sure that it's feasible for you to complete in the time frame that they're suggesting for the internship. Then as the HDR intern, you do a weekly reflective journal, which gets sent to the to your academic mentor. They're expected to read it, and each academic mentor will set up a different schedule of how often that they meet. But I think roughly we recommend just touching base with you at least once a fortnight to check in, see how you're going, brainstorm, through any roadblocks or challenges that you've come across. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and they do need to attend the mid and the final internship presentations as well. These are on Zoom. They're normally 30 to 45 minutes in length. So I hope that helps. And The mentor was mentioned in the second line of the slide, but got the answers in the following slide. Okay, no worries. I'm glad you've got all the information and a little bit extra as well. Great. Okay, so I will thank you all for your questions. They're great. And I'll move on now. So this is just this slide here, the need help networking. This really comes from students who I've chatted to in the past about self-sourcing, because if you're right at the start of your self-sourcing and internship journey, the question and the comment that I often hear from students is they go, I don't know anyone. I don't know any industry partners. How would I even start networking? And I will recommend that QUT has some really fantastic resources available through, it's called Employ Your Ability. And so I think Ivy's put the link into the chat for you. Here's just a few of the modules that I've put on the slide for you, just as a little taster of some of the things that are available. Connections, opening doors, strengthening your connections. And so tell me about yourself, which is how to formulate an elevator pitch so that you're able to introduce yourself in a really snappy and engaging way when you're talking to industry. So I would really recommend undertaking some of these. Networking is really essential no matter what you're doing in life. So I would really take advantage of these free training. And once you've got those skills, you might feel a little bit more confident than going to industry events, going to conferences, talking to your supervisor. I think someone's just got their mic on. Gillian, did you have a question?
No, sorry, I just pressed the wrong button.
Okay, no worries. So I would really recommend undertaking some networking training so that you're confident to go out there and network with industry. And I mentioned the internship presentation. So these are your pieces of assessment for the IFN 004 Shell unit. So the mid-internship presentation and the final internship presentation, they're both conducted virtually. You get myself, your industry partner, your academic mentor, and anyone else from the industry organization who would like to be involved in your presentation, which they often do, to find out about your project. And you update everyone, obviously at the midway point, on what you've done, any successes and challenges, and then your plans for the second half of the internship. And then the final one is bringing everything together and celebrating what you've achieved during the internship. And once you've completed the internship, this is the completion certificate that we issue you, as I said, signed by Professor Christopher Barner-Kowalik, and something wonderful that you can have on your professional resume and on your LinkedIn to demonstrate how you have used your research skills in the real world. Now, I think you've heard so much from me this morning. I want to give you a little bit of a break from information overload, and I would love to invite my3 to now turn her camera and mic on and to chat with you about her HDR internship experience. And I'm just going to, my3, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Susan.
Great. No worries. I'm just going to mute and stop my video. So all over to you.
No worries. Thank you. So hi, everyone. So Susan gave me a really nice introduction at the start. My name is Maitreyi Velmurugan, and I'm currently a PhD student in the Faculty of Science. And I'm working on a number of projects that are kind of adjacent to AI ethics and how do we understand how AI works and how well we can understand how AI works. So as Susan mentioned, I did quite a few sort of things last year around industry engagement, like the 3-minute thesis and the internship. So last year, I would have been in about my third year in, my third year in. So I was a year after my confirmation, and I still had about a year before my final seminar. And I was thinking, okay, this sort of time period might be a really good point in time to start an internship. Get a little bit of an idea of how industry works, make some decisions on whether I want to go into industry, try to stay in academia, whether I want to stay in research at all, those sorts of things. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of went out and did a lot of these activities, was because that was when I was really starting to think about why did I get into research and where do I want to go from here. And I was hoping some of these industry engagement opportunities would really help me out. I also started going out more regularly to Center of Data Science networking events, which were really fantastic because I got a chance to meet a lot of people in industry, hear about how they work and what's kind of involved there. And by industry here, I mean, people who worked in hospitals and data science, people who worked in government, people who worked in various sort of sectors and organizations. So that was a really good experience for me. And when I actually first started looking for internships, it was a bit tough because most of the internships I found tended to be engineering based, whereas I was based more in, I guess, the IT software side of it is where my experience is. So I actually started off trying to self-source an internship because at the time I started looking, I couldn't find anything that would fit my skill set and my experience and my interests. And that had mixed results. So I met someone at a networking event who seemed really keen to have a data science intern, and we got to chatting, and this was someone from a government organization. We had a couple of meetings with them, with someone else at QUT affiliated with them. And at one point they said, look, we might need to, we have our budget meeting this week. I can let you know after that if, we have room for you on this particular project that we might have, going. And unfortunately, they didn't get back to me. So I'm assuming it didn't go quite so well. I also interviewed with a startup who was recommended to me by someone in my network saying they were looking for interns. Similar sort of situation. We were talking, it seemed really promising. And again, it fell through because of funding reasons. So that was a bit of a disappointment and a bit of a setback, but I had really good support from my supervisory team on helping me find an internship. So I didn't feel too discouraged. As Susan mentioned, I eventually ended up finding an internship through this organization called HDR Intern, which is run by the Australian Mathematical Sciences Institute. I would strongly recommend keeping an eye on their website if you're in the STEM field. They have internships ranging from health, defense, all sorts of sciences, engineering, all sorts of things. So basically the entire spectrum of STEM and health. So I would definitely recommend keeping an eye on their website for anyone in the STEM field. And they were super helpful as well. They had some really interesting projects. And when I started applying, one of their people actually got in touch with me before I went to the internship interview, sat down with me, made sure I was, reasonably okay for a good fit for the internship, and gave me some tips on interviewing as well, actually, which was really nice. And I can see on the chat, someone has actually asked for advice on the internship interview. And what I found was that the different interviews I'd attended actually were very, very different from each other. So the startup, it felt more like a job interview. I came in, they had a couple of people who asked me some questions. I gave them my resume, and they'd already been through the HDR internship sort of process before with someone else. So they understood that side of it pretty well. So it was mostly talking about my skill sets, the projects they had on, and kind of sharing information around that. And it felt very much like a job interview. The one that I had with the government organization, that was a series of about 2 or 3 meetings, and it felt more like a meeting than an interview. We chatted with each other. They explained some of their projects. I explained some of my interests and where they might align. We talked about, where this could potentially go, but it felt more like a meeting than an interview. And the third one, the one I was ultimately successful with, was Lockheed Martin, which is an aerospace company, but they have sort of many different branches to their work. And this particular sort of subsection of the company I was working with was focused on machine learning research, specifically in the area of ground traffic. So when I met with them, that was somewhere in the middle, actually, because we still had that chat about my skills, what I wanted to do, all of that sort of thing. But they also, what I thought was really interesting, was gave me a sort of an elevator pitch of themselves and the company and the project. And they asked me questions about, what did I think about that? So that was really nice. And from what I've heard from other students who've done internships as well, the interview experience does tend to vary. So I can't really give advice that's going to fit every situation, but I think the best way to approach it is to actually know about the company, let them know upfront, what you're interested in, why they wanted to, what they're looking for and what you're looking for. So really the best advice I can give is kind of know what you're going into beforehand so that you can best decide what you might want to talk about. The organization, yes, I can see that Susan's just put it in. So HDR Intern was the organization I got the internship through. And the company I worked with, Lockheed Martin, they were a really big company, and I felt really honored to have worked in, such a big and well-known company, even as an intern, because they were just so supportive. That team was so supportive of the work I did. I was working at the same time as another intern who was on a similar project. And the project that I was working on it was not as similar to my PhD as I had hoped. But there was some threads that were earlier on in my PhD around certain types of data sets that I found were really applicable to this particular project, but it was a little bit removed from my PhD. And I think that was really helpful. One, because it kind of let me broaden my tool set. Previously, I'd been focused on, certain algorithms for my PhD. And this internship really gave me the opportunity to explore a whole different other side of algorithms, whole other types of data. And the thinking process was the same, of course, because you start with the data, work out the algorithms, do all of your evaluations. But then it let me apply them in a completely new context with completely new algorithms, completely new ways of thinking about what is successful versus not successful. So that was a really good experience for me there. I also learned a lot about the differences between academia and industry. I had to submit a draft report at one point, and I kind of approached that report with the mindset of I'm going to write this like a paper, which is just, at this point, just kind of built into you, I think, if you've been publishing during the course of your PhD or your master's research. And I got some really nice feedback around, yes, this is perfect, this is great, this is concise, but actually we're looking for more detail. This is what we'd be looking for in an industry report. So little minor changes like that, where I just had to readjust my thinking. I think that was a really sort of interesting experience, trying to learn more about those differences and what is actually actively looked for in industry research versus academic research. And the team that I was working with was super supportive. I mentioned during the mid-internship presentation that, one of the reasons I'd picked up an internship was to learn more about how it worked and why someone might choose academia versus industry. And after the presentation, they actually said, if we've got time, maybe we can just sit down and talk about it together, because all of the people I was working with, they had also come from academia. So they were very willing and open to talk to me about, why they'd chosen their career paths, how did that work out for them, what are the organizations, the different organizations they worked with, how did that, how did they all work, that sort of thing. So I think for me, a big plus was just this organization I was working with was really supportive and helpful and willing to give me so much information about, that helped me figure out what I wanted to do, as well as giving me a project that I found really super interesting to work on. So overall, it was just a really great experience for me. And I think if there's really any sort of main tips I can give you guys on internships, the first one would be, I guess, start looking early, because it does take quite a while. I started looking for internships in about January of last year, and I didn't find one until August, and then I started in September. So don't be discouraged if it does take time, and start early, and get your supervisors on board as well, because my principal supervisor was my academic mentor, and my associate supervisor as well was she had experience supervising another student for an internship, and she was able to give me some really good tips on how do I start looking and what I might need to do. So that was really helpful, having my supervisory team on board. And I guess the third thing I could say is just kind of have a clear idea of what you want to get out of it. I think that was really what helped me the most in the end, when I was trying to sort through all of these options I had, because a couple of people mentioned in the chat, you really want to work with not-for-profits or government organizations. And that was kind of where I was leaning towards as well when I started looking. But I found that the company, the multinational company, also gave me the experience I needed and the perspective I needed, even if I wasn't working directly with those government or not-profit organizations, because this company worked with them as well, and they could kind of give me the perspective I needed. So I guess if I had to sum up, those would be my 3 big tips. I can't see any other questions on the chat, so I might kind of close up here for now, but I'll be here till the end. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them then.
Thank you so much, Maitri. That was an amazing presentation on your internship experience, and I hope everyone else found immense value in that. And Maitri will be here until the end of the session when we have a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, you're very welcome to ask them in the Q&A session then. But I think, Maitri, you made an absolutely amazing point that I just wanted to reiterate, that internships, they do take time. And often I will get emails from students and they'll say, I'm under final examination now. Can you help me find an internship? Really, by that stage, the likelihood of you finding an industry partner and us facilitating it in such a short amount of time is very unlikely. So I think, Maitri, your advice on start early is absolutely essential. As I said in the internship eligibility a little bit earlier in the workshop, once you've completed 6 months full-time equivalent study, that's one of the markers of being eligible. So I really think around that sort of 6 to 12 month mark is a really great time to actually start connecting with industry, putting the feelers out and seeing if you can connect and find a prospective industry partner to work with. But great point there. Okay, now I want to move you into, so again, this is that option 1 of if you're applying for a HDR internship that we have advertised on our HiQ site, whether it's through our program or through APR Intern. And I wanted to take you through some tips for the application and also for the interview. We have this fantastic resource called Nailing Your HDR Internship Application that's available online. I think Ivy's just put the link in the chat. And I strongly recommend that you consult it either in PDF or video format when you are submitting your application or before you submit your application for an internship. Recently, I've seen some internship applications come through. So we have a standard template of the internship application. And one section there is describe your personal motivation for applying for this internship. I've recently seen some applications come through and students will put things in like, I've published in this field. And that's it. That section, your personal motivation for applying for the internship, it is really your section to go above and beyond to say to the industry partner, this is why I am the best candidate for this position. And in that way, the internship application is very much like a job application, and it is just as competitive as a job application as well. So I would really encourage you to consult this resource. And when you are preparing your internship application, to really think about the audience reading it. It's your industry partner, and think about what would they want to know from me? What is going to help them see that I'm the best fit for this HDR internship? What do they need to know about me to select me for this opportunity? And just go for gold in that personal motivation section. Just wow them, really. Someone had put into the chat earlier that they would like to gain confidence in applying for HDR internships. And my advice to you, and I think it's a Maya Angelou quote, but my advice is the only limitations that you ever have in life are the ones that you set for yourself. And so I really encourage you to have that frame of mind of, all right, I'm going all in, and I'm going to show this industry partner why I'm the best fit for this particular project, and then just go for it and wow them. And the only thing holding you back is really yourself. And once you've got that frame of mind, then you can really just apply with confidence. So that's my advice for the application. And then for interviewing, for internship projects. So once you've submitted your application and we've sent them to the industry partner and they review them, they then will shortlist potential candidates to interview for the internship project. Most of these interviews will happen online. Occasionally they happen in person, and I've got some tips on the next slide for interviewing. But we also have a careers educator within the GRED team who runs career competitive interview strategies. It's coming up on the 29th of November this year, but I would also recommend that you consult with the careers offerings from GRED, because there's a couple of other opportunities coming up a little bit earlier that you would be able to participate in and be able to get some interviewing advice from her earlier session. So I would highly recommend having a look at the careers offerings from GRED. But in terms of interviewing for internships, here are some of the very basic pieces of advice that I would give you based on my own experience of what I've seen happen in internship interviews previously. And normally I am there in the interviews, not in any sort of capacity to select an intern, but just often because students have questions about the HDR internship program at that point in time that obviously the industry partner can't assist you with. So I'm often there and I see how students interview. So my first tip is to join the Zoom early. It always makes a great impression when you're punctual and makes you seem capable. Make sure that you have adequate lighting for your Zoom interview as well. On Zoom and in any interview, you're trying to build rapport in a very short amount of time and in, I think, quite an unnatural environment of the interview. So being able to see you is essential for the industry partner. And if they can't, or if they can't see you well, that actually inhibits the rapport that you can build with them quickly. Also organize to be in a quiet location. If you've got, someone interviewing in a coffee shop and you can hear the like the grinder being tapped in the background and the beans being flicked, it's really distracting. And again, it can actually inhibit the rapport that you can build. Also to wear professional clothing. If you're on Zoom, at least from the waist up, you can have your pajama pants or your board shorts on the bottom, but please do make sure that you have professional clothing from the waist up, again, to build a good first impression. And then to have great body language on Zoom. So this could include having good posture, and again, posture can also reflect confidence. So when you have rounded shoulders and you're slouched, this does not exhibit great confidence to a prospective industry partner. So having great posture with open body language is great. Hand gestures, and I hope that I've been a great example of that today. I do speak with my hands a lot on Zoom, and it really does help to build rapport, and also smiling as well. I know that that can seem really quite unnatural, smiling at a camera, which is what I'm doing now. And my tip to you is that if you find it difficult, try to think of someone that you would be speaking to who would naturally make you smile. So I'm giving you all of my inside tips, but when I started delivering workshops, I would always start the workshop by thinking about my niece, because she's really playful and silly and fun, and that just makes me smile. And then that delivers across to you as my audience, and hopefully it's engaging and we're able to build rapport in that way. Speak up and give concise answers. One question that industry partners will often ask is, so tell us about your research area. And often I've seen students spend 15 to 20 minutes talking about their research area. In a 30-minute interview, that leaves the industry partner almost no time to ask you follow-up questions on how you would be a good fit for the internship project. So just make sure that your answers are quite concise and only limited to maybe a minute or two at the most, so that you're giving the industry partner lots of opportunity to ask you questions. And be confident. Don't undersell your skills. You have, as HDR students, you have amazing skills and experience. And as I said with the application, the interview is also your opportunity to wow them and to really demonstrate why you're the best fit for the internship project. So know what you have, and we'll go through this in the next slide, but know what you have and don't sell yourself short. Just really speak well about yourself. The other key is know what the industry partner wants. So the keys to this, when we are have an internship project that's available for application, there's often an expression of interest that the industry partner has completed. And I really recommend that you look through that carefully to know what the industry partner is looking for you to complete as part of the internship project, and to speak to that. You could even use some of the language that they use in the expression of interest to describe some of your competencies. If they're looking for strong Python programming, make sure you speak about that. So have a look through beforehand and learn what they're looking for, and be able to incorporate what they're looking for in the delivery of your response in terms of what you can provide. We recommend using the STAR method, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. So that's just a way to frame your responses to industry partners when you're describing your previous experience. And there is a fantastic resource called Big Interview, and the link is there. I think Ivy's put it in the chat, that I really recommend that you use before you have an internship interview, just to freshen up your interview skills. If it's been a few years, it can feel a bit jarring to go into an interview if it's been a few years. So Big Interview is fantastic to give you that interview practice, and refine and improve as you go. I always say there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. So if you're not successful in one internship, after one internship interview, oh well, what can you learn from that, and what can you apply and do differently for the next one? And lastly, know what you have that's relevant. So know your relevant skill set. And I say relevant because it's not ideal to discuss skills that just aren't relevant to the industry partner for that particular project. So know what your relevant skills are, your educational background. You can even look back at previous unit outlines and learning outcomes to sort of freshen your mind. Any relevant employment experience. This is so important. I had one student who, two students who interviewed for an internship opportunity with Quaid Goma, the Queensland Art Gallery of Modern Art. One student had previously worked in an art gallery in Mexico. Both students interviewed really well, but because that student had discussed in the internship interview that he had some art gallery experience, that was what actually got him across the line. So think about your relevant employment experience, your research topic, but remember to keep it condensed, and prepare for the interview by making a short list of examples, some of the highlights that you've experienced as either a HDR or in previous employment experience that you could really draw on to discuss during your interview to wow them and to demonstrate why you're the best fit for this particular project. If you're not sure of your strengths, I would recommend undertaking a character strength survey. This is just one that we think is a good one, but you do need to create an account. It's a free account, but you do need to create an account to be able to do it. I'll just disclose, we get no payoffs from VIA Character Strengths Survey. We just happen to think it's quite a good one. So if you're not sure what your strengths are, I would recommend completing something like that to understand your skill set and be able to discuss it with the industry partner. Also, you as a QT HDR student have access to these fabulous ASIN modules, which will help you prepare for your interview and internship. So these are just a few, and I would really recommend having a look at them, especially if you've not worked with industry previously, or if you've not undertaken a work integrated learning experience before. These are all just resources that can help you prepare to put your best foot forward. The one module that I'll particularly point out is understanding workplace cultures. And often I have international students who complete internships, and one of their pieces of feedback afterwards is, that was such a great experience to understand what an Australian workplace is like, the cultural differences between my home country and an Australian organisation. And so doing this module beforehand can really help you to integrate and to understand what to expect from an Australian workplace as well. So I'd really recommend that module. Okay, we're coming to the end. I've given you a lot of information today, and so I just wanted to take a moment to give you, I think, my top tips on where to go from here. So I would really recommend reading through the HDR internships page on HiQ for more information about internships. Also, to submit your registration to the HDR Industry Engagement Program, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. Definitely start a conversation with your supervisor. And that was one of my three pieces of advice as well. Talk to your supervisory team, because they might have connections with industry partners that can help you when you're self-sourcing an internship. Definitely participate in the self-sourcing and internship workshop. The next one's coming up on the 23rd of March. That's a really great workshop on how to establish that relationship, build some trust before you pitch the internship. And it's much more successful doing it that way than just cold calling. So I really recommend you come along to that. Read the GRED emails, and I'll show you what they look like in a couple of the slides. And then apply for internships. As Maithri said, it took some time. She had a couple of internship opportunities in the works before her one with Lockheed Martin actually was successful. But having all of that experience would have absolutely helped her for a successful internship interview with Lockheed Martin. So apply and also practice your interview skills on Big Interview as well. So this is the HDR Industry Engagement Registration Form. I really recommend that you complete it. It will, it helps me, because sometimes I'll have industry partners that approach and say, hey, we really need a HDR student to start next Monday. And I don't have time to promote that opportunity to all of you. But then those of you that have registered for the HDR Industry Engagement Program, I can look through your registrations and see what your research area is. And then I can approach you and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. Are you interested? So it will also trigger an email to your supervisor, which then that's a great starting point for a discussion with them, that you're interested in internships and how can they help you be able to find one or facilitate one. And then these are the GRED emails as well. I think the frequency that they're emailed with is going to be changing. So that I may need to update that. But the HDR Matters newsletter is sent out, and that's got workshops and different training opportunities that you can participate in. And then on the Tuesday, the fabulous orange email that has our internship opportunities listed in it. So that's through the QUT HDR internship program. And I'll also advertise any internship opportunities through HDR Intern that are either based in Brisbane or are remote internships. So if you're interested in other HDR internships that are outside of Brisbane or not remote, then definitely keep an eye on their website as well. And then, as I said, apply for internships. This is our HiQ site. It's an example of what it looks like. As I mentioned, I've got 3 fabulous internship opportunities with Navitas at the moment. So let me know if you're interested in them and I can talk to you more. And then this is just a little bit of a plug for some other sessions that we have coming up. So on Tuesday, the 14th of March, we've got our HDR Industry Engagement Workshop, and my colleague Catherine is going to be running that one. And you'll hear about the full suite of HDR industry engagement opportunities, including things like design sprints, the 3-minute thesis, and the visualize your thesis competitions, as well as internships. And then on the 23rd of March, I'm running that one, and that's all about self-sourcing a HDR internship. I'd love for you to come along to that one. This session is more about the application, that first option of how to apply with application and interview tips. And I would love for you to come along to that self-sourcing workshop as well, just so that you're fully prepared on both options of how to secure an internship. One thing that I would love is if you're already working with industry, if you're employed with industry, or you're working with an industry partner on part of your PhD, it would be great if you can let us know about it, because that could be a starting point for you for an internship. Or, and I've just realized I've misspelt my email address on that slide. So let me just put the correct email address into the chat for you. hdr.intern@qut.edu.au. There we go. So if you're employed or you're working with an industry partner, I'd love if you could send us a quick email and let us know about it. Okay. Before we move into the Q&A session, I would also invite you to complete the workshop survey today. Ivy's just put the link in the chat for you. It would be great if you could let us know what you thought of it, what you got out of it, what's great, if there's anything else that you would like included. And it helps us make these sessions better and better every year. So I'll just give you a minute to do that. It's quick and anonymous, and lets me know what you enjoyed about the session. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to mention one more thing, which is the eGrad School. So eGrad School, it's modules that are, it's a virtual graduate school. It's managed by QUT, and there's online training and modules available. Now, this is something that other Australian university HDR students have to pay for, but you as QUT HDR students get it for free. And I would highly, highly recommend having a look at some of the modules that are available. In particular, project management will absolutely help you with internships, communication and collaboration, and explore your career potential. I think they would probably be my top 3 to recommend for you. So just something for you to check out. Okay, so we've come to the end of the session, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But if you haven't put your student ID number into the chat, I'd love if you could do that now, please, because then I can send you out resources later today or tomorrow from this session. And if you have any questions, you're always more than welcome to email us at hdr.intern@qut.edu.au. But you're also welcome to ask them now. So I'm just going to, thank you everyone for putting your student ID numbers into the chat. I'm just going to have a quick look. I think I've covered all of the questions that have come through the chat. But if you have any additional questions, please feel free to pop them in now. Okay, Roseanne has said, it was mentioned that if we do our internship, any academic milestone will be extended. Does it mean that I will have to finish my HDR program in an extended time? Or does it mean that the date of our milestone will be moved to another time and we'll still finish the program on time? That's such a great question. Thank you so much, Roseanne. So part of when you're undertaking an internship during candidature, part of being in the IFN 004 unit means that your candidature is paused. And then once you've completed the internship, all of your milestones get moved back in time by the duration of the internship. So if it's a 3-month internship, they all get moved back by 3 months. It just means that when you come out of the internship, your candidature clock hasn't been ticking and you don't have a big scary milestone upon you that you need to attend to really quickly. And it also gives you the opportunity to just really devote your time exclusively to the internship and to really get the most out of the experience while you're undertaking it. Okay, there's a couple of thank yous that you thought it was a great session.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm kind of dealing with milestones as a result of my internships personally at the moment. So if I can just add a quick clarification as well, your maximum candidature date also gets moved. So it's not that you still have the same maximum candidature date. That will also move. So it's less pressure as well. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yep, great point. Thank you, Maithri. And I was also going to say to everyone else here, Maithri is still here and can still answer questions. So if you have any more questions for me or for Maithri about her internship experience, feel free. You're very welcome to turn your camera and your mic on to ask, or you can ask them in the chat, whatever is your preference. And thank you, Heshani and Chinmay. Thank you so much for your lovely feedback, that it was a great session. Thank you, Samudu. That's lovely. I'm glad it's been helpful. And one thing that I always personally find when I attend workshops is that I get to the Q&A session and I go, oh, wow, I've taken in so much information today that I actually can't think of any questions on the spot to ask. So if that's you and, tomorrow you think, I should have asked this, just feel free to email hdr.intern@qut.edu.au and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Lewis, you've come online.
Hey,
how can we help?
Yes, I was, I'm 1.5 years into my PhD, and I'm just thinking about the pathways for one, looking at doing an internship, but two, as well, thinking about how I can plan my internship with my PhD and my research as well. And I was just thinking, is it the first point of call is just to talk with our supervisors about it, just to see if they got any if they've got any links to industry.
Absolutely. And also I think that chatting to your supervisor, they'll be able to give you some guidance as well on what would be an appropriate time for you in your research to be able to undertake an internship. Sometimes if students are doing a lot of data collection, they sort of say, pausing data collection halfway through may not be the best time for you to do it. So I think having a chat with them, definitely they're great to talk to for industry connections, and then they might even be able to recommend some events and things like that you could attend as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm just thinking of if there were any other questions that we had to go I had, because we've gone through quite a lot today, which was really good. So I'll just stick around just for a couple of minutes to see if I got any more questions.
For sure. Yep, absolutely.
But thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation today.
Oh, you're so welcome. While you're having a think on any other questions, we've also got a question that's come through the chat. That Roseanne has stumbled on an immersion placement, and is there any orientation for this too? Yes, Roseanne, so we speak more about immersion placements in the HDR Industry Engagement Workshop that's coming up on the 14th of March, I think it was. So more information about it then, but just a very quick overview on immersion placement. The real difference between an internship and an immersion placement is that in the immersion placement, it's more of a shadowing opportunity. The length of time is a lot shorter. It can only be a maximum of 30 days, and you're not undertaking any deliverables. as part of the immersion placement. So it's really great if there's a particular, say, role that you're interested in industry and you're thinking, yeah, I might like to look into that as a potential career choice for myself, but I'd like to know more about it. And then we can organize an immersion placement for you so that you can go out and shadow that person and actually see what their day-to-day involves so that you get more information about it. So it's quite different to an internship, but great that you're interested in it. Did we have any other questions? We've got 6 minutes left of the session, so we've got time for a few more questions. Or I guess, Maitri, did you have any other final pieces of advice or golden nuggets of information that you would share with someone who's about to do a HDR internship journey?
I guess maybe one last thing that I would say is consider how fixed you are on actually working at this particular organization in person, because my internship is conducted remotely. The company is actually down in Melbourne, so so that made a bit of a difference. I was still up here in Brisbane working remotely, but the company was fantastic because they had set up quite a few systems that we could use for document sharing, for communication. We caught up regularly, weekly. So even though I wasn't there in person, I didn't get to meet them all at the office or anything like that, I still felt incredibly connected to the organization still. So if you're also kind of looking for a workplace type experience, I think these days remote working is also a very sort of realistic option. But also at the same time, I'd recommend maybe checking in with them at the start, saying, if I'm going to be working remotely, you know, what are the things I need to be aware of and how connected I will be. So that was something that I neglected to check up front. And I think I'm pretty lucky it worked out as well as it did in terms of keeping connected with them.
It's a really good point, and it also opens the point that with remote internships, yes, you know, we've had a lot of them in the past, and that also means that with remote internships, you can do them if the industry partner is interstate, or if they're a regional organization or an international organization as well. We had a student who undertook a remote internship with Germany, and for that one, they just had to adjust their hours a little bit. Instead of doing the Australian 9 to 5, it was more some hours in the morning, which was equivalent to the German afternoon, and then some hours in the afternoon, early evening, which was equivalent to the German morning. So remote internships really does open up a new world of self-sourcing opportunities for you all in terms of interstate, regional or international industry partners. So great point. Thanks, Maitri. Actually, while we have you here, would you like to talk a little bit about your 3-minute thesis experience?
Yes, absolutely. So as part of some of the stuff that I was doing last year, I also got involved in the 3-minute thesis. At that point, I was, again, still looking for internships, and the 3-minute thesis opportunity came across in my email, and I thought, oh, maybe this will be interesting. At the very least, it'll help me refine my pitch for how I talk about my research to someone who's maybe not familiar with it. And it was definitely helpful. That first interview I went into with the startup, they had a basic idea of some of the algorithms I was working with, but I could kind of give them more information about what it was and why it's important, but also in a way that's a bit more accessible, because even though these guys were working on working in AI techniques, they were all engineers first. So one of the biggest things I think I got out of the 3-minute thesis was actually being able to explain my research. It was also a fantastic experience meeting all the other contestants and working with everyone who was kind of mentoring us and guiding us through the process, thinking about how I presented, you know, in just one slide and what that would look like, and the sort of process of how I presented. So I think it was really great for my presentation skills, as well as giving me a script for the pitch I was going to use for my internships, my internship interviews, I should say. And it was just a really fun opportunity as well to kind of take the time out of the sort of day-to-day stuff and just think about, if I was explaining this to my mum or to my grandma or to the random person I meet at a barbecue, how am I going to explain it to them? It was a really good sort of way of thinking through that. So I'd strongly recommend it, especially if you guys are thinking about, how do I formulate an elevator pitch or how do I talk about my research? It's a really good experience and a really good opportunity.
So great. I love looking after the 3-minute thesis competition, and it really is so much fun to see how everyone's presentations progress from the peer and practice sessions that we offer through the different coaching stages. And my three, I've always congratulated her because her topic it's really hard, I think, for someone at a barbecue, or I would always say, if you ran into someone at Woolies and you just want to tell them what your research topic is, how would you do that? And I think my three just did an amazing job at making a very complex research topic very accessible to a general audience, and that's certainly a skill in itself. So yeah, well done to you. All right, so we're at the end of the session. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you got some value out of it. There's no more questions in the chat, so I will close the session now. But as I said, you're very welcome to reach out to us at hdr.intern@qut.edu.au. Oh, Lewis, you're back. What can we help with?
Just one more quick one. I was just looking through my notes. Where did you find the HDR engagement form, the industry engagement form? That was the last, I think it was the last slide that you said that we have to fill out the form.
Yes, let me get that link for you again, and I can pop it into the chat.
Perfect, thank you so much.
There we go.
Perfect. I'll just copy that.
Yep.
And I'll put it in there. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, that's okay. No worries at all.
That's good. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis. And thanks everyone else for joining. Feel free to email if you have any other questions. And I really look forward to working with you all, finding and facilitating exciting internship opportunities. So thank you so much, and hopefully see you at the self-sourcing and internship workshop as well.